welcome this afternoon here in Italy to our session, to the next session, the lunchtime session here in Italy. I'm really happy to be able to introduce Alexander Pavlenko, who is a professor at the AP Chekhov Institute of Taganrog, in Russia, where he runs an MA program and specializes in socio-linguistics. Today, he'll be talking about the role of the COE's linguodidactic frameworks in supporting lesser used languages of Europe. And we'll pay particular attention to the notions of plurilingualism and multilingualism embedded in said framework, and as well as be talking about the conceptual basis. The case of Ulster Scots is studied as an illustration. So I'd like to hand over to you, Alexander. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your introduction, Andrew. I would like to thank the organizers for their hospitality, which I appreciate so much in such turbulent and tragic times. So my paper deals with supporting lesser used languages by linguodidactic means, which is quite an obvious approach, but not an easy one, as our experience shows. So let me share my presentation. Okay. Sorry. Okay. As you know, the Council of Europe has introduced a number of common tools to be used across the European Union and beyond, that is, in geographical Europe, in order to optimize and unify the teaching of native, second, and foreign languages. The tools in question are applicable to any indigenous language, including the lesser used ones, spoken on the territory of Europe. And the most fundamental of such tools is the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, adopted in 2001, and providing a common basis for the elaboration of syllabi, teaching materials, as well as assessment programs and tests. The common strategy and tactics in the field of language teaching is elaborated by the Council of Europe Language Policy Division. The approach applied by the Council of Europe is based on the important conceptual and terminological innovation introduced within the above-mentioned framework and consisting in distinguishing between multilingualism, a concept of societal character, and plurilingualism, which deals rather with individual peculiarities of mastering languages. A number of European lesser used languages in state of endangerment may benefit and in fact have already benefited from these measures. The European Charter leaves it to the choice of local authorities whether to classify such languages as regional or minority ones, providing no definition of both classes. The tools of implementation of the above-mentioned approach in the field of supporting lesser used languages of the countries of the Council of Europe through teaching and learning are an indispensable help for language planning. Our paper reflects the initial stage of the study in which we consider in the above-mentioned context the case of Ulster Scots in Northern Ireland as a typical European lesser used language. Our study combines a sociolinguistic aspect with that of applied linguistics, namely linguistic didactics. European Framework of Reference for Languages elaborated by the Council of Europe to achieve its goals in language policy, uh, is a major tool of this kind. The language education in Europe is carried out under the terms of the European Cultural Convention, which provides a framework for intergovernmental cooperation among the member states. Governments commit themselves to taking the necessary measures to promote the teaching of one another's languages in the other states party to the convention. Plurilingual skills are formed continuously in the course of individual's life and career, with school providing the necessary basic formal teaching. A series of medium-term programs has focused on policies and tools to support the development of plurilingualism in citizens and linguistic diversity in European multilingual societies as a means of language. The concept of plurilingualism is inseparable from the CEF, this Common European Framework of Reference, and its functioning. As is known, the concept of multilingualism refers to the presence in a geographical area of more than one language or variety of language. Individuals may be monolingual, speaking only their own language or variety of language, or they may be plurilingual with several languages. Plurilingualism refers to the repertoire of languages or varieties of languages which many individuals use and is therefore the opposite of monolingualism. It includes all languages, mother tongue or first language, and any number of other languages. Plurilingualism assumes the existence of a complex and composite competence in communities of language users. As an illustration of the meaning of plurilingualism, an adult European with at least a secondary education might be expected to have in his or her repertoire at a given age a national language spoken written to the standard of the country, a variety of and or generation to which he or she belongs, a regional or minority language that he or she speaks and writes where appropriate, one or more foreign languages understood but not necessarily spoken to a basic or intermediate level, or another foreign language with a higher level of proficiency. At a later or earlier point in time, the languages or the levels of proficiency might be different depending on whether on further education, work experience, individual interests, and activities. Plurilingualism varies throughout life, and the choice of languages and levels at age may depend on one's needs, interests, and geographical location. A plurilingual repertoire is not a uniform concept, and the CEFR allows for the definition of distinct competencies at different levels, and that can be particularly valuable in planning a more diversified approach to language teaching and assessment to help learners develop their plurilingual potential. The fact that small steps can be created and built up to be placed in an international transparent system, and the fact that different skills or competencies can be defined and assessed separately might be helpful in promoting the learning of a greater range of languages by individuals, including less widely learned idioms. That is,
Alexander,
original.
sorry to interrupt you. Sorry to interrupt you, Alexander. I just wanted to check. Have you moved between your slides, or are you still on the same slide?
We'll meet later. We'll meet them
okay,
later.
okay, it's fine. I was just wondering. I just wanted to be sure that the slides were working properly. Okay, no problem. All right, thank you.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt.
Right. Never mind. So that can, for example, facilitate the inclusion of more languages in a school timetable if there is a policy of viewing and recognizing all levels of achievement in a language, including partial. The common reference levels are being used for policy planning at national level in most uh, countries of the European Union and are taken into account in the non-EU countries of Europe. Coverage of more languages in the educational process based on a universal system of competences is, of course, one of the aims of the European Language Portfolio, or ELP. The ELP was also launched in 2001 and has made good progress since that time, particularly in the formal education sector. It is a concrete tool for relating the framework levels of language learners according to their age and stage of development. This learner's document is designed to assist them in recording their competences in a uniform, transparent manner and in managing their lifelong language learning. It therefore has a pedagogic function and a reporting one, both of which are fundamental to all portfolios. There is no single uniform ELP, as you know. Until 2014, this document had mandatory character, but since that time, it is optional. Uh, the above mentioned instruments, that is CFR and ELP, are intended to promote and support the development of plurilingualism, the lifelong development of the individual's plurilingual repertoire. Obviously, the development of the plurilingual competence includes an awareness of why and how one learns the languages chosen. Motivation and a degree of learning are essential for lifelong language learning. The guide for the development of language education policies in Europe addresses policy issues in such a global context and offers concrete suggestions for coherent approaches to the language curriculum. It assists national or local authorities in looking at all languages in education: official language, mother tongue, original and or minority languages, sign languages, as well as foreign languages. Such an activity, known as Language Education Policy Profile, is underway for many countries and regions of Europe, the first being the region of Lombardy in Italy. The application of all European frameworks to lesser used languages automatically increases their status and places them in a pan-European context, along with prosperous, generally recognized languages. This action in itself is an important element of language planning. Some regional and minority languages have already gained from such an inclusion. Welsh and Catalan are only two most conspicuous examples of this kind. We have chosen as an example an idiom which could gain a lot from applying educational tools to it, but which still lacks the level of teachers and educationists' attention it really deserves. That is Ulster Scots, spoken in Northern Ireland. Further below, I will present a short account of Ulster Scots as one of the local idioms in terms of its involvement into the educational system. As is known, Ulster Scots originates from the western and southwest central dialects of the Scots language, spoken by the so-called planters who migrated to Northern Ireland during the reign of King James VI, James I, after the union of the crowns. Naturally, the dialects of Ulster Scots are historically most closely associated with the dialects of the southwest of Scotland and have a number of common features with them. Ulster is the only region outside the administrative territory of Scotland, where there is a compact Scots-speaking language community. You can see Ulster on the map. Compact settlements of the speakers of Scots exist here in the counties of Antrim, Eastern Donegal, Derry, and Tyrone. Ulster Scots used to be neglected for a long time and only attracted public attention in the 1990s at the final stage of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. Recently, discussions have been underway to raise the status of Ulster Scots and to elaborate an appropriate language planning to protect it from assimilation by local Englishes. Spoken Ulster Scots, unlike its literary variety, is having been shrinking because history Ulster Scots, the period Friday Agreement, 1998, to the present day, on behalf of the local Protestant nationalists and the turbulent activity institutions. Language planning acts as a tool of constructing the Scots-speaking community and addressing its roots. These developments constitute an important dimension of the ideology and activity of the local nationalists. Ulster Scots enjoy some support and affirmative action, both from the responsible state bodies and certain social Friday agreement, and other official documents. Its official status is still very low. One of the institutions that played an important role in the planning of policies in relation to Ulster Scots is the Ministerial Advisory Group on the Ulster Scots Academy, which was formed in March. Among other purposes, this group produces a holistic long-term development and research strategy, the implementation of such a strategy, and progresses the Ulster Scots Academy approach. The above-mentioned Ulster Scots Agency was established as a result of the Belfast Agreement in 1998, together with the corresponding Irish body, which has the aim to develop Irish language education. These two boards form the board of the North and South Language Body. Concerning financial support, the Ulster Scots Agency is funded by the Department of Communities in Northern Ireland and the Department of Arts, Heritage, Regional, Rural, and Gaeltacht Affairs in the Republic of Ireland. The Ulster Scots Agency aims to promote conservation, development, and use of Ulster Scots as a living language, encourage and develop the full range of its attendant culture, and promote an understanding of the history of the Ulster Scots. As regards education proper, the Ulster Scots Agency offers to organize such cultural activities as after-school clubs, school drama, and both music and dance workshops. There are centers for Ulster Scots in Queen's University Belfast and the Ulster University, which also aim to develop further teaching and new projects at undergraduate and postgraduate level. Skilled teaching staff is a real problem because Ulster Scots is not included in primary and in-service teacher training. However, at secondary teacher training, students are allowed to incorporate Ulster Scots work. Learning materials for Ulster Scots in primary education have been developed by the Ulster Scots Agency in collaboration with examinations and assessment. This is a program intended to revitalize the language with the medium of instruction being English, and all available is for primary school. The actual situation with Ulster Scots in practical education is as follows. First, there exist a few learning materials for preschool education, but no statistics on the use of Ulster Scots in preschool education is available. According to the curricular guidance for the preschool education, children for whom English is an additional language and those who are being taught the medium of Irish should be supported, but Ulster Scots is not directly mentioned. Two, Ulster Scots is not taught as a subject or used as a medium of instruction in primary school, but some schools teach it in the form of workshops or projects. Three, the same situation is characteristic of secondary school education, in which in which Ulster Scots is also present only in the form of workshops and projects and maybe other extracurricular activities. And number four, in higher education, Ulster Scots is also present on a semi-official basis. It is not offered as undergraduate program, though may be included in some projects such as the education project or poetry project, etc. In other words, the situation with Ulster Scots is contradictory and unsatisfactory because education as the most powerful tool of language planning is employed to a very poor extent. 25 years after the Good Friday Agreement, the support of Ulster Scots is carried out mostly in the form of extracurricular social and cultural activities and events, what reveals the lack of either belief in its prospects in the community or political will to change its status. The potential of the above-mentioned methodological frameworks, that is CFR and ELP, is practically not used. However, no matter how cheerless the situation is, it allows one to feel some optimism regarding the prospects of Ulster Scots, as the situation definitely can change if the authorities introduce a more radical version of language planning. Moreover, the effectiveness of the common European frameworks is evidenced by the experience of other lesser used languages. Irish, in particular, both in the Republic of Ireland and in Ulster. Scottish Gaelic in the Highlands and Islands of Scotland may also serve as an example of successful language planning, employing educational tools. And concluding my presentation, I would like to stress that Ulster Scots, you can see the map with the percentages of the population more or less competent in Ulster Scots. Ulster Scots is, in a sense, the most in-demand Scots dialect in terms of its political and social relevance, which is due to the unique situation that has developed in Northern Ireland at the stage of ending the so-called Troubles period and easing social tension. In Scotland, there is no basis for such widespread demand for Scots from politically active groups, as is the case in Northern Ireland, where a resettlement dialect group of this regional language had developed. However, even this demand is unable to overcome the negative attitude of the population towards Ulster Scots, which is perceived by the majority as corrupt English. It is not easy to overcome the inertia of public consciousness and increase the authority of this idiom. An attempt was made to consolidate its official status, but the situation in general and attitudes in particular seem not to have changed. The situation could be corrected by the radicalization of language planning with the introduction of new educational tools, including the above mentioned CEFR and ELP. The introduction of minority languages as a compulsory school discipline, as well as a medium of teaching, is obviously the most efficient means of revival and promotion of such idioms, and it is of interest to consider the evidence of Ulster Scots in this respect. Definitely, the effectiveness of using the capabilities of the above mentioned frameworks largely depends on the type of language planning the authorities carry out. In the UK, language planning being rather liberal with all that this entails. And finally, in accordance with the frameworks in question, each minority or regional language has the right to exist in the educational space on a par with well-established majority languages. The support and preservation of the Breton language in France were facilitated by the spread of the so-called divan, in English meaning seed, divan public-private schools. The creation of bilingual classes in public schools, departments of teaching Breton in universities, and so on. However, these initiatives are practically not supported by the French government uh, at the level of approved language policy. In the UK, the Welsh language teaching and learning system is of more advanced character, and the government has made significant progress in education through the establishment of bilingual schools, which has contributed to an increase in the number of Welsh speakers. Summing up the above, we can conclude that the linguodidactic approach to language planning is indispensable for the preservation, support, and dissemination of lesser used languages. CEFR and ELP, aimed at self-assessment and tracking personal results, are considered to be expedient tools for the implementation of such a policy, what is proved by language activists' experience across the continental Western Europe and the UK. Meanwhile, Ulster Scots in Northern Ireland is at the initial stage of developing its social functions by educational means and engaging the above mentioned common European methodological frameworks. Uh, these common European methodological frameworks could seriously contribute to the implementation of this task. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Alexander, for a very interesting talk. I think it was really nice to see a talk on minority language, and
Thank you very much, Andrew.
it's very interesting and very relevant topic. Um, so I'd just like to ask the participants if they have any questions. Um, I think you can write them in the chat. So I've got the chat open.
Oh, yes.
Or there might be the possibility for you to turn on your microphones. This is the first session I'm moderating this year, so I'm not 100% sure, but you might be able to turn on your microphones if you'd like to. Or you can also write in the chat with any questions. So if I just give a few seconds or half a minute to anybody that might have a question or two.
Oh, yes, sure.
It might also be possible for attendees, you could also put your hands up. I think I can see the option that I can allow you to talk.
Oh yeah, oh
Um, yeah. So if you can also put your hand up, I think, and then I can allow you to talk.
yeah.
Um, in the meantime, I do actually have a couple of questions because it's kind of quite interesting to me. Originally coming from the UK, in particular, I'm quite aware of the encouragement of Welsh, the Welsh language in Wales. There are a couple of questions. Maybe I can go ahead and ask a couple of questions first of all, and then if anybody's got any other questions, then they can always jump in. The first question is, maybe you mentioned it, but approximately how many speakers of Ulster Scots are known to be
Oh
in?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very, very important and difficult question. Uh, Approximately more or less 30,000 people.
Okay then.
30,000 people. I think uh, mostly of they're middle-aged people and elderly. And
Hmm.
elderly. Uh, the census of 2011 states it about 100,000, but actually this figure accounts for everybody who know who knows at least something about Ulster Scots, a couple of words. Well, but real speakers, the number of real speakers is much smaller, about 30,000.
So is there a risk that that language will die out if it's not really?
Unfortunately, yeah, there is such a risk.
Mm, mm. The second, I mean, kind of the second question that I had was, I remember that with Welsh, that the Welsh government, literally put a number. I can't remember how many, but they literally put a number on the number of speakers they wanted to get up to that level, to be able to speak Welsh to a I think they said fluent level. I think when the Welsh government spoke about it or put the announcements out there, their kind of policies, they probably wouldn't. I don't think they would have used CFR terminology, but maybe something that's a bit more relatable and perhaps more relatable to the general public. And I remember them saying, we want a certain amount of Welsh speakers to be fluent by a certain time. Is that kind of language planning or that language policy in place for Ulster Scots? And also, is it actually possible to really achieve that and to try and quantify the numbers of speakers that you want to achieve, if that makes sense?
Well, the situation with Welsh is altogether different
Mm,
because, first of all, Welsh is a distinctively different language. It is very far from English, and this fact has saved it to a great extent. As for Scots in Scotland and Scots in Ulster, uh, they are uh, close cognate languages with English, and the speakers of Scots, both in Scotland and in Ulster, they consider their home language to be a corrupt version of English. You know, the the attitudes to their language is not are not so positive, not so positive. Unfortunately, yes, they communicate in Scots at home, in everyday life, but they do not respect it as, for example, the speakers of Welsh respect Welsh. You know, that is the problem. That is the problem. And school education, mass communication, the media have ruined the positions of Scots language very much, very much. So
yeah, no, that's very interesting. Thank you for that answer. Um, That's very, very interesting.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So just before we finish, I'd like just to hand over again if anyone's got any questions that they'd like to ask. Now's your time to ask somebody who's a real expert on a minority language and
Oh,
the
yeah.
situation there.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
That would be very interesting.
if anybody's got any questions, then
There may be parallel situations in Italy, which is rich in minority languages and dialects and beyond. Okay.
all right.
Okay.
So thank you very much for a very interesting talk, Alexander.
Thank you for your
It
attention,
was
Andrew.
great. Yeah, it was really interesting. I've kind of got a bit more insight into my own. Uh,
And where do you come from? What part of Britain?
oh, originally I'm from the southeast of the UK, right in near, not too far from Canterbury and,
Oh,
and Dover. So I'm right down in the southeast of the UK. So completely another
it's
part. Yeah.
magic region.
Oh, it's
Fantastic.
very nice.
Very beautiful.
It's not as mountainous as it is here in the Dolomites, but you can get some good fish and chips over there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But
Okay.
thank you very much for your time again, once again, and thanks everyone for attending. And here in Italy it's lunchtime, so I'll say buon pranzo. I don't know in Russia what time it is.
It's 2:53, 2:53
2:53.
p.m. p.m.
Okay, all right. So you might
Yeah.
have already had lunch, and if not, then
Yes, yes, yes.
okay. All right. Well, have a good afternoon,
Uh,
Alexander, and I hope you enjoy the other sessions. Thanks
so
very much.
nice to meet you, Andrew.
Nice to
Okay.
meet you
Good
too.
luck. Good luck.
Okay, bye bye.